Now, against the backdrop of the crucible of severe trials and tests that Nigeria currently faces, there are now just about 6 months to go until the presidential election in February. The ballot is seen as a big test for the older political parties, the APC and the PDP, who represent the old guard of Nigerian politicians, and the Labour Party and the NNPP, who are seen as representing the more progressive, more youthful branch of new breed Nigerian politicians. According to analysts, so fierce is the competition for votes likely to be that it is probable the race could go into a runoff for the first time since 1999. And beyond the presidential ballot, there'll also be a massive struggle to gain control of the National Assembly, without which any winning candidate is likely to wrestle with issues of legitimacy. And this as they battle to cope with the poisoned chalice they've inherited, a lethal cocktail of existential threats, according to the World Bank. Well, for his analysis of the state of play as 2023 draws close, I'm joined now in the studio by the lawyer and former Minister of State for the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja, Chuka Odom. Thank you very much indeed, Minister, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
When you assess the outlook for Nigeria ahead of the 2023 election, what do you see, especially in light of all the warnings that are coming about the existential threats from insecurity to the economy?
Well, let's start. I might well start by saying that the current situation in Nigeria today is novel because we've never had it this bad. There's never a time in the history of this country that we have had this cocktail of woes, both in the economy, security, employment. The list is endless. Now, the only hope Nigerians have today is the election coming up next year. And that election presents a big opportunity for Nigerians to redefine what they want from their government. The truth really is that the current number of people involved in this process have increased. There's a demographic now that is a very young population that are more civic aware, as reflected in the search for voters' cards. They need to register and participate in the process. There's also new dimensions to this whole thing. The political parties that are involved in this election or upcoming election are not the traditional parties. This is the first time we have outsiders, so to speak, coming in and having massive acceptance by the populace, especially the youthful population. So the narrative is changing. And I do believe that it will not be business as usual. And if INEC lives up its commitment that this election will be free and fair, I do know that there could be possibilities for surprises.
And do you see 2023 as essentially a 4-horse race or a 2-horse race?
It's not going to be a 4-horse race. It's going to be more like a 2-horse race. And I say this because I do believe that the two traditional political parties still hold a huge chunk of the governors. And let's not forget that the governors play very critical roles in terms of organizing the electoral processes in their states. And the way these governors align in the political the evolving political scenario will determine to a large extent the way these states are carried in terms of who they are siding. But I do also know that there is a possibility that the new influx of voters, especially the young voters, could upturn the apple cart. There is no questions about that. So as far as I'm concerned, all bets are off. But I do know that the two main traditional political parties will be the main contentious parties in this process. But it's still very far in the day to make an intelligent prediction as to where this game will go. But I do also know that there's a possibility for a runoff.
Nevertheless, we'll come back to that in a minute. We know, because you talked about this at the outset, and we've had the World Bank and many other sort of observers of Nigerian society pointing to it. and all those things, insecurity, economy, and all the rest of it, fueling the mood of the country as elections approach. How is that likely to affect the way people vote and who they choose to vote for as they try to find justice in the debris that's been left behind by successive administrations?
The first concern I have is security. Because for you to have a credible, fair, and free election, you have to have security. And with the amount of insecurity, of course, there has been some gains in the past couple of days, but we're still going to see how far-reaching those gains will translate into actual securing of those territories that are no more under the control of constituted authorities, where non-state actors are actually taking over those spaces. Now, for you to have a credible election, you have to have security. And I do not see how. You remember in 2019, one of the major issues before that election was how we could secure the country, especially the Northeast, for an election to take place. And we remember then that the Jonathan administration did quite a bit.
Yeah, that was in 2015.
Sorry, in 2015.
Yeah.
We did quite a bit to calm the situation and made it possible for...
Yes.
Now, you can imagine what the situation is today as against 2015. So we are talking about an election next year. We should be focusing more on securing those unmanned and unpoliced and uncontrolled spaces where the election will have to take place. Because these bandits, criminals, kidnappers and all of that, they are not going to give us a safe bet to do these elections. So my major concern first is security. Secondly, I also think that given the outpouring of civic awareness, one would see a situation where INEC may not have the capacity to really harness this surge, and there will be the usual Nigerian lapses, machines not working, the transmission not whether man-made or deliberately set up for that purpose. So I am concerned about how prepared the electoral umpire is in view of these factors to really conduct a free, fair elections.
And in that regard, with all these people supporting different candidates, and in many cases quite vociferous in their support, I mean, bitterly and sometimes fiercely ranged against their opponents, how important and dangerous does that make 2023?
It does. But the thing here is this. I believe that before the elections, once the campaign starts, I do believe that there will be some ground rules. This campaign ought to be an issue-based campaign. We have to tone down the rhetoric, for people to be able to look at the parties and the options that are available, look at the candidates, be able to interrogate them, not just about making promises, but see who have the capacity and the mental energy to confront the myriad of issues, that is confronting the country. So, first of all, I believe that the elections will hold. The other thing is that how much the outcome will be acceptable to a greater number of Nigerians as representing their will is what is very important in this whole process. So I do believe that, we would be able to frame the issues in such a way that the candidates will be held to account, not just about the promises they're going to make to Nigerians, but by their own antecedents, what they have done in the past, what are their records, and so on and so forth. So these are the issues that must come to focus in the course of this election. And these issues has to be interrogated properly as against each political party. But I do know that the president has said time and over again that he wants his legacy to be that he delivered a free and fair election next year. And I do believe and hope that that would happen. And if that happens, that will be a very big legacy, whatever you think about the failings of this administration. But the truth is that Nigerians need this free and fair election because it's key to the acceptance of the government that will emerge.
Absolutely. I have to ask you this, because you mentioned the government of Goodluck Jonathan, and you're also talking about the administration of President Buhari. Are you still an active active member of the People's Democratic Party?
Yes, I am a member of the People's Democratic
So
Party.
what are you up to these days politically?
We are supporting Alhaji Atiku Abubakar.
So that's your candidate?
That's our candidate.
Right.
That's the candidate of my party.
Well, that's your candidate.
Yes, that's my candidate.
Right.
And we are supporting him, not necessarily based, because look, let's be clear about this. If we go into the social injustice that has happened in this country in terms of power shift, we wouldn't be talking about this. But the ship has taken in water, it's sinking. So this is not the time for us to talk about tribe and ethnic and religious affiliations. What we are looking at right now is how we're going to salvage the country. And let me tell you this right off. I have sat at the highest decision-making body in this country, and I know that being president of a country goes beyond making appointments, making decisions. There are so much involved. And a critical component of leadership is the capacity to hunt quality individuals that can carry out these mandates, who can do this job. And the job at hand is Herculean. It needs somebody who will arrive and be ready for the work on day one. We don't want to think about the other issues, which if I go into it, I will be considered partisan. But the most important thing is that among all the candidates, it does appear to me, and this is a partisan opinion, that Atiku Abubakar has what it takes at this point to begin to look at Nigeria. And if you look at his 5-point agenda, which he has already published, you can see that not just enumerating the issues as they stand, but his roadmap to actualizing them appears to me to have some traction for Nigeria.
Well, somebody would say it would appear to you, wouldn't it?
Yes.
No. Given the fact that you're a member of the PDP. But that's perfectly fine, because that's your political opinion and you have a right to express it. But you talked also, when you were wearing your less partisan hat during this conversation, you talked about the fact that there are imponderables in this election going forward, things that can't be predicted because of the nature of the way we're seeing things evolve. Do you now see P2B and Kwankwaso as the ones who've opened the possibility of a third force, and the SDP, which used to be the one seen in that capacity, especially when it fielded Donald Duke as its candidate, has now dropped off the list in your assessment?
Now, I said it at the beginning that, look, this particular upcoming election presents new demographics. And I did point out that there are new players who are now giving more prominence and acceptance by a large majority of Nigerians. Now, talking about P2B, P2B is a new phenomenon in our political space, and it was made possible by the failings of this government. It is the frustrations, it is the failings of this administration that gave fire to this whole youth movement. He simply tapped into the frustrations.
Yeah, but to be fair, the youth are saying they're not just blaming this government. They're talking about all the old guard politicians and the old guard parties.
There's simply no doubt about it that there is a thirst, there's a yearning for a new breed of politicians. And I don't discount that. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, look, if you look at what is happening today, especially the way the obedient movement, the Kwankwasaya movement, all these things can be placed or put in the context of this new emerging political class, mainly of young people who are fed up with the old political arrangement. And I don't think you can throw the baby away with the bathwater. What I think would happen probably is that these people would have to get a good chunk of the votes. They will reset the trajectory of political conversation in Nigeria. And at the end of the day, it does appear that it's a very good thing because it reflects a deepening of our democracy, that this kind of people we consider fringe players are finding their way into the mainstream. And who knows, because elections are very difficult to predict, especially if they are free and fair elections. If you look at what is happening in Kenya, and the way it's going between the opposition candidate and the government, the deputy prime minister, deputy president, Russo, you can see that it can go either way.
Absolutely.
It can really go either way. So it is too early in the day for someone to make an intelligent guess as to how this unfolding drama is going to taper out. But I do know one thing for certain, that whatever it is, this is a very good development. It will put both the old guard and the new guard on their toes. The issues will be well canvassed. People will now be able to hold on to something and make a value judgment based on what they believe is possible in the emerging scenario. But like I said, it is still too early in the day for anybody to make an intelligent guess.
Well, I want to thank you very much indeed for that excellent analysis. Chuka Odom is a lawyer and former Minister of State for the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja. Thank you very much indeed.